As I can't travel and hike at the moment, I thought I would make a little mini series of topics that are quite personal to me. I've been trying to practice some everyday vulnerability. Thank you, therapy. It makes me highly uncomfortable being vulnerable, but I'm going to give it a go. So, my first topic is about how I have no ambition and how I've wasted time. So I'm going to come straight out with it. I have no ambition when it comes to the world of work. I don't dream about taking phone calls, spreadsheets, conference calls, emails, and generally just getting really stressed out and taking on responsibility for the sake of someone else's profit. And here is where I've wasted time worrying about that, worrying that I don't have that ambition. Total plot twist, I know. I'm not about to make a video telling you guys how you should try and achieve every goal known to man. In fact, this video is quite the opposite. I spent most of my 20s and a fair amount of time now actually measuring myself against everyone else and thinking, why didn't I know what my calling was? Why don't I get excited by the concept of promotions and job titles? Why did I spend every working week in a state of anxiety, either at work, waiting for my shift to end, or once my shift had ended, when I was at home, waiting for my next shift to start? And the worst thought process of them all is the nagging voice in the back of my head asking me, why am I such a lazy waste of life? So, as I've got older throughout the years, I've tried to unravel my sense of guilt and shame around feeling this way. And really, a job, by definition, is something that you have to be paid to do because you wouldn't choose to do it ordinarily. It wouldn't be something that you would elect to do, so you have to be paid in order to be made to do it. Why would you feel excited to do that? It seems to make quite a lot of sense that you wouldn't look forward to or enjoy doing that. And this seems to be generally a very taboo subject in a world where your sort of worth as a human being, your worth on this planet, your worth in life is measured against your productivity levels or how many times you've leveled up in the world of work and your career. It just makes me wonder why we're allowed preferences in other areas of our life, but a preference not to work is generally labelled as unacceptable and almost a bit of a trait that people don't want to associate with. And this is such a deeply held belief that productivity equals superiority that you very often find people competing over who is the most overworked. It's like, who's the biggest martyr competition. It in some ways actually feels quite embarrassing to admit that if given the choice, I would choose to happily never work again. I can identify a feeling of shame to admit that outwardly, but am I any less of a person, or have I left less of a positive mark on the planet by not subscribing to or enjoying or paying into the world of work? And yet, some people have careers because, after all, someone has to be a scientist, someone has to be a mathematician, someone has to be a teacher, someone has to be a doctor. Meaningful careers do exist, but in the grand scheme of statistical probability, most of us will just end up in a job with little to no meaning or fulfillment whatsoever. And so we'll basically just be doing a string of meaningless and endless tasks for a company in order for it to continue existing. So I guess in this scenario, the main fulfillment in this case is that by doing this, having a job, no matter how crappy, at least the rest of society sort of sees us as part of the gang. But is working a job in general worth, especially if you hate it and you're miserable, is it worth the sort of acceptance of random people, or even people that you know? They're not an extension of you, they're just people that you know. For example, would you have a child to make other people happy? Would you get married to make other people happy? Would you travel to another country and live there to make other people happy? I don't think you would do any of those things just to make someone else happy if it made you miserable. I mean, I'm assuming you could be a serial and unrelenting people pleaser. Okay, so now I've given you my stance that I don't have any ambition in the world of work and I don't enjoy working, and if I had the choice, I would never ever work again. I imagine that some of you are going to naturally want to counter my stance with potentially saying you haven't found the right thing, or you haven't found the thing that you enjoy, you just haven't found your jam. I have tried many different roles in many different workplaces, and it just isn't that. It isn't. It's more that I just don't dream of labour. I don't dream of the same things or near enough the same things day in, day out. I dream of a life of peace, relaxation, exploration, and human connection that is authentic, rather than being shoved together in a huge or tiny building room with a bunch of people that you would never have invited into your life had you not worked with them for 8, 10, 12 hours a day, 5 days a week, for the rest of my life until I retire. That's not my dream. And yes, I've tried self-employment, and naturally I've gone down a route where I have taken my hobbies into the space of work, and it's not a hobby anymore and I don't love it anymore. It's then my job and I hate my hobby all of a sudden. So it's not to do with me being self-employed either. I feel like in the end, what it comes down to for me, and probably for everyone, is money. It costs to live. Essentially just existing, which I never consented to, by the way. Thanks, Mum. Is expensive. So I do what I have to do to get by. After all those years of feeling super guilty about it, I am now 32 years old and I'm done with comparing myself to what other people do and feeling shame and guilt because I'm just really not up for kissing ass and climbing the career ladder. And the more people I speak to, the more I realise that it's just sort of this belief that's been indoctrinated into them from just life. And I don't really know if the people that I originally saw as enjoying this sort of thing really do enjoy it either. But either way, if this is something that people love, then fine, power to them. You go and do the things that you love. But I am through with feeling guilty about it myself. I'm wasting no more time feeling like I should have to apologize to people for not being impressive enough, if, you know, feeling almost shy or embarrassed for just saying that I've got a temp job or I'm working at a store or a coffee shop or wherever the hell I work at the time, rather than saying that I have this high-flying career that I grappled through the ranks to get to. I'm not built that way, and you know what? you might not be built that way either. So don't feel bad about that. Don't feel embarrassed about that. Don't act up to this hype that you have to love work and you have to crave more. Just do what you got to do, get in, get your money, get out, and just shed that guilt and shame, because honestly, that guilt and shame has this intense capacity to erase literally years of your life worrying and worrying about how you're not this and how you're not that. And what's for me is hiking and pooping in the woods.